All right, so welcome to another Kaiju Encounter. I'm with Hali Codling today. So tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of what got you into art.
I was very lucky to kind of grow up with an artistic family. So my parents were both photographers, and then my grandmother was probably the one who really got it started. She watched me a lot as a kid, and so she was very anti-TV. I had like screen time as a kid, and she was very good at giving me like art projects to do. We had this huge book that we would just work through all these art projects and painting rocks to look like feet, all that. And she was an artist, and I remember walking through her house and seeing all of her paintings and being like, people can make that? You can just like draw a dog and it looks like a dog? And that blew my little like 3-year-old brain. So I think she got it started, and my entire family was just always thankfully really supportive of it all. There's a lot of memories of me being like 3 years old, just with parchment paper from when my dad worked at a packing company, just covered in paint and just squirming across the paper. My parents were like, she's an artist. She's beautiful. She's great. And so.
Do you still have any of that old artwork left?
No, my parents probably do, maybe. We've moved around so much that it all kind of has disappeared into the wind, unfortunately.
It's always fun to look back on it and go, oh, I remember this, or, oh man, that was so bad.
I lost a bunch of sketchbooks to a rainstorm in a garage that wasn't sealed properly, but I still have like a good collection, and I'll search through it. And it's funny to look back at art from like 15 years ago and be like, that's so much better than I could ever do. Just like new perspective on it. But
do you ever think about those art projects and try to recreate them now? Or?
Oh yeah, I mean, especially with all the challenges with like Clever Kaiju and all that, and it's really good resource for like, what the heck do I even draw today? Go grab the sketchbook stash and like look at all these things that you probably had way better ideas for because you weren't like adult stressed yet. So you still had your old young, fresh, creative brain that wasn't just sad from the world yet. And then you can go back with your talent, with that really cool idea, with that talent that you've grown, and recreate it to like how you wanted it to look as a kid, which is really fun and very like heal your inner child moment where it's like, oh, I finally drew the thing I wanted to draw properly at this point.
So is it safe to say that, that was an influence on you as far as?
Oh yeah, my family was a huge influence. I think I've always been, it might sound cheesy, but I've always been drawn to it. But other than that, just super supportive family, super supportive friends. Yeah.
Any other, so on the subject of influences, are there any other influences that you see today as other artists or people that you know that when you're around them and you're like, oh man, this is a great idea? Or
I mean, God, the entire Clever Kaiju community, getting to meet people like Nate, Gary, yourself, getting to meet artists like Chris Yarborough. Like Chris Yarborough has been a huge recent influence on art.
His colors are
that dude rocks.
Really awesome.
And the biggest sweetheart in the world. But I like that question of who influences you is always a little difficult because I'm just really hard to remember names. So I can never recall one singular person, but the people that I have in my life right now with everyone here and meeting all these new people like David James, everyone there, those have all become my inspirations for sure.
Influences change, they're by the moment, they're by, someone that you might follow online or
I think my early influences were people who drew wolves on DeviantArt. So, and then I became that person a little bit.
All right. So you talked about as a kid working with different like craft projects and everything else. And so I know that you work in other mediums. Okay. So what all mediums do you work in?
Mainly acrylics. That's been my favorite so far as traditional mediums. I remember starting off with acrylics and really enjoying watering them down to just like essentially be watercolors. And then someone showed me what watercolors were. So it ended up being acrylics, watercolor, in college, I got really into charcoal, like the just grittiness of it. I really enjoyed. Oil paint is just, my poor little brain can't handle the cleanup. It can't handle all that. And I'll just freeze up brushes until they're crust, and I don't have the money to keep replacing all those brushes.
Oil is a patient. It's an act of patience, because you got to wait for it to dry. You got to wait for it to cure. You got to, you know, it's just crazy. I know you did. Was it you that did some horses?
Yeah, here on Commercial Street over at a Rod's Barber Shop, I did this huge mural of just these. I now think it's funny because I did the traditional tattoo 3 horses design unintentionally. But just these big, you know, black and gray mural stuff. There's a mural I painted in the bathroom here on the street. I don't know if they painted it over yet or not, but a few murals like that. They're fun, but mentally exhausting. And then painting in front of people for that long ain't my jam. I'm very proud of it, and it's cool. And I'll probably paint a mural in here and in my house, but probably nowhere else, because that was just exhausting.
So you're working in large format, digital and analog. Is there one that you find more liberating, more challenging, or one that you just like, this is my go-to at the end of the day when I just want to?
They're pretty even on the scales. Like, what got me into digital was being at home during COVID and got that sweet government money, and I bought myself a little iPad, the Procreate and the pencil, and that I think was a really, really great transition for me for going to school for traditional and then being able to sit down. And I had like the sketchbook skin cover to make it feel like paper and everything. So it felt like I had a little tiny sketchbook sitting there and drawing. And that was easy for my brain because my parents were photographers, so I knew about Photoshop. And that's what scared me from digital, because I didn't want to learn Photoshop or anything like that. It just, the buttons and shortcuts couldn't stick in my brain. So having just the double tap features with Procreate was so nice. And then getting into that, it was really liberating in the sense of the undo button has a gem. But there's also a level of like, I don't know, when you're in that digital, you can move stuff around, you can put ideas down so much quicker, you can change those ideas so much quicker. You don't have that pressure of like, well, there goes 4 hours of work that I have to scrape away from the canvas and start new. I literally just hit double tap and undo it and keep moving. So the speed of that is nice. But I also really like taking my time with traditional pieces. I like the, again, in my style, I like the one-on-one. I like the ritual of it all, the cup of coffee in front of the easel. And I think the freedom of digital also kind of made me relax with my traditional, but my traditional made me slow down with my digital. So at the end of the day, what I go back to is whatever is in front of me first, whether it be like my little red sketchbook or my iPad.
So out of curiosity, we've all done it. When you're working traditional, you ever try to scale up?
I've done
or find an undo button somewhere.
Yeah, the scaling in one was one I did at first. God, the amount of times I would flip my Procreate pencil around to try and erase on my iPad too, or like I would erase it and then try and sweep the invisible eraser shavings off my iPad.
Yep.
Yeah.
We've all done it. So talking of digital, as soon as this pops up.
She low and she's slow.
Yeah. So I was looking at a lot of your pieces, and one of the ones that really stood out to me immediately looking at your ArtStation account was this piece.
That's Ben's favorite too.
There's a lot of emotion in this compositionally. So tell us what was going on. What was the inspiration behind this? Was this just something you sat down and just did for fun, or?
I think it's always very, very scary to put your emotion like that for people to look at and then ask you about. So I stayed away from it for a long time, and my husband Ben was like, you should really, like, we were talking about life and stuff, and he's like, sounds like you just need to paint about it. So sat down and painted about it, and I also really love that piece because it was the first time I felt comfortable doing something more emotional like that versus like the design concept work. It's safe. Nobody asks about it. They just think it looks cool. And then I can move on with my day. But this one, like, I think I called it snail, right? Maybe. But it has like the general, like, it felt like a snail or a slug, and that feeling of like pulling down on someone's shoulders, like your own sadness
The emotional
is like
weight.
pulling someone else down, and this reliance on someone or the substance, you know, with a cigarette in her finger. So it was just, I just wasn't feeling great at that time. And I think that shows.
Yeah, so looking through a lot of your artwork, when you started working in artwork, I think, what was your background? Where did you go to school?
I went to college for art. We made it till about junior year when I dropped out. But we almost made it. I mean, in high school, definitely weird little art kid. Like, whenever I had a chance in history or English and had all my work done, I was like, oh, I had a project to work on in Miss Hale's class, which Miss Hale at West Plains High School, I hope she has the best, longest life ever. She was my art teacher all 4 years throughout high school, and she was probably really also influential at all because she was the only person who gave me a hard time and pushed me, where usually I would create some art and everyone would go, that looks really cool, good job, pat on the head, and I would give my art to her and she would go, you can do better, stop half-assing it. I'm like, okay, Jesus. So she was awesome, and any chance I got, I would scoot over to her classroom and just hang out in that classroom. And once we graduated high school, I knew I wanted to do art. I didn't know what I wanted to do it with. Almost went into graphic design, but by the time I was going to college, it was already pretty flooded, so scooted over to get my master's in just painting and drawing. And I hit a point where I went, at the end of the day, I've met the people I want to meet. I've drawn the things I want to draw and learned the things I want to learn. This little piece of paper doesn't really mean much to what I want to do in the future. So I'm glad I went to college. I'm also glad I got out when I did.
So you felt like it was a benefit?
Oh, yeah.
You got your money's worth of...
Probably not money's worth, but yes, I got...
But,
yeah.
Do you feel like going to school was... Instead of learning it yourself on your own time, was it more beneficial to go to school?
Oh, yeah.
Controlled environment.
Controlled environment, structured. Nothing really beats, as we all know, nothing really beats surrounding yourself with artists at all times. And that's why it was really great. I mean, every day I was in a building where artists were trying to learn. So I miss that sometimes. I miss the consistent projects and learning like that. And very good self-sufficiency lessons during that time as well.
So, in high school, you're talking about how you were the little art kid that was doing everything. You went into college.
Fingerless gloves.
Thinking about graphic design. Mm-hmm. So what were your end goals in life as far as art was concerned?
I don't think I think that's kind of why I dropped out, is because it hit me hard, where I was like, I don't know. I have no clue. Like, I think my end goal and my dream at that time was to be like a gallery artist, was just to paint, be a painter, do like Arts Fest here and try and get into galleries.
So just your own freedom to do art and then do a gallery showing and let people
for sure
appreciate and or purchase.
Thought about like museum restoration for a hot minute. And so I think me not knowing what the heck I wanted to do and trying all these different things gave me a pretty good like utility belt of different little bits of knowledge that have helped so far.
Yeah, a lot of artists and students I've talked to, they're really in that same category. It's like picking and choosing different things and then trying to apply it to different situations and whatnot. So you didn't end up finishing school, but you ended up getting some professional work.
For sure.
So tell us about that.
That is the joy of just being sociable and talking to people when they talk at you. I am still kind of getting past saying it was just very lucky. I mean, in a lot of way, it was luck to have met Gary Bedell and all you guys, but the hard work of making this art to be hireable was my own. So once met Gary, started talking to him, and then ran into a tack wagon and all those beautiful people and got to do my very first ever concept work job, which made me throw up multiple times when I got the job because I had no experience whatsoever. It was a big job with good money and like professional work. And I remember sitting down at the computer for the first time and being like, I can't wait to draw things they'll just hate, and then they'll realize they don't want me anymore and they'll just fire me. I've got 2 weeks of this and then I'll be gone. It'll be great. But it was like hands down one of my favorite jobs I've ever had. I mean, working from home, getting to work with Gary and Chris Yarborough and Sean and all those guys were just so sweet. And I know I lucked out on how I was treated at that job because I've heard horror stories of how concept artists are treated. And I was very, very fortunate to be treated like a human being, essentially. But did that, and that built up my portfolio. Like that year and a half of that job, my artwork before and after looks like I spent 10 years learning art. And it was just having that rigorous, again, like being in school, every day you have a project, you're surrounded,
And you're building off those other individuals.
Exactly.
So speaking of that concept art, so tell us about these pieces here.
Yeah, so these were all for like a ice planet, but also lava infused, whether it be, under the surface, kind of imagining the science and biology of that and how the two would combine, obviously a bunch of steam, and the color play between like the reds and the blues is always just really fun and beautiful to work with. But I was super, again, like all the art that I made for Attack Wagon was the first time I'd ever made art like that before. And so these were the first landscapes I had ever done.
Did they end up using these?
Yeah, in like the Pinterest board sense, I was, as a concept artist, you become the human Pinterest board and you create all these beautiful pieces and they go, I like the vibe of all of them. Do it again. And it's like, okay.
And the combination of these 6.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But those were all like, I would just take like a lasso tool and carve out the shapes and then slowly add the layers and details.
And then some of
All
those
that.
other concept art, this one here.
Yeah, little space
Now,
pirates.
did you end up doing more environments or more character stuff or a little bit of both?
Whatever was called for at the time.
So tell us about these here.
These were all like little space camps. These were some different like arenas because it was very top-down spaceships flying around. So where are they flying? Some of my different ideas for this with how they would be powered, all of that jazz. You can see a lot of like me getting to know Chris Yarborough and how he paints in a lot of these for sure.
So you see a lot of those thick brush strokes. And so did you start researching other artists?
Oh yeah, I mean, admittedly, you go online and you Google a general idea of the concept and you just scroll for 30 minutes and absorb it into your eyeballs and then just right back onto the other page in your own way.
Now, when doing concept art, did you fall into the hole of going into too much detail?
No, I got asked to do more detail in the end, actually.
So you start out with less.
Yeah,
and
because that
so
was
add
like
more.
my traditional painting background was just slapping it on fast, working your way into the details. And so all of these, these took like an hour each, if less, on each one. So, yeah.
Okay.
Gotta draw fast.
Yeah, it's really high speed in those areas.
Which helped me loosen up for sure.
So within that realm, you were talking to me earlier that some of these, like this one here, was one of your favorite pieces.
This one is one of my favorite pieces because it made me think about when I would sit in the library in middle school. And I was half homeschooled, half public schooled. And so it was a weird situation where I would go to a few classes in middle school, go home, and then go back to the middle school. And so if I didn't want to go back home, I stay in the library. I would spend like 3-4 hours at the library just going on like how to draw websites or old DeviantArt, old Tumblr, and printing out references of just like how to draw anime wolf, how to draw all these things, and just absorbing, learning how to draw all that. And this one makes me happy because I think about if, 12, 13-year-old Haley found that in that library, she would grab it and print it out and try to learn how to draw from that. So yeah, it felt like the first time I would reference myself. And I like doing the concept artwork for that little video game made me look into different video game concept artists and all of that. And all of the art for Monster Hunter is some of my favorite. And so that was definitely very inspired by all the Monster Hunter games I've poured hours into.
So do you follow, is there any particular artist that you follow?
Again, no, not that I can think of at the tops of names or anything like that.
Just whoever at the time, or just something that you
I think, yeah, in the same way where sometimes I don't listen to full albums or even know the musician, but I like one song by them, I think kind of applies to how I follow artists as well.
So tell us about this one here.
This was actually, when we were talking about it, this was an old piece that I drew for the very first time on my iPad. It was like one of the very first pieces I drew on Procreate when I got my iPad for the first time. And every time I tried to render it, like revisit it, I just hated it every single time, but I liked the drawing a whole lot and got Clip Studio, got the Wacom, and just one night it hit hard. The juices were going, and I finally rendered it in a way that I really enjoy. And that was a big step in me trying to not just draw something cool looking, but draw something with kind of a story, like something that will make someone sit and go, I wonder what happened to get to this point in this drawing, versus like, cool, and then just moving on to the next drawing, Yeah,
there's a lot of story kind of going on here.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that you just sat down one night. Is there a particular time of day that you feel more creative, or you find yourself working?
Doing a tack wagon got me to like drawing in the morning more so than I used to, but I think the time I like to draw moves based on what life gives me schedule-wise. Like I just fall into a routine pretty easily, but definitely, that time between 5 and midnight, or first thing in the morning. Middle of the day, not really, but
so
like,
much.
What is it, when cats wake up only in the morning, in the late evening? There's that term. It's not nocturnal or dayturnal, it's something else, but yeah.
All right. So if you, so we talked a little bit about your professional practice. So you've delved a little bit into different aspects of art, large format, digital, analog. So, and you've done personal projects. You talk about maybe doing a gallery type of thing. So is there thinking right now, and things change, as you go on, but right now today, if you could do one dream project, what would it be?
One dream project? I mean, I would retire as an artist if I got to do a card for Magic the Gathering. I would love to do Magic the Gathering art. That would be my dream project. Even like just a little land card, but if I could get a few cards out there, that would be my dream. Yeah.
And yeah, I'm not too much. I know I like Wizards of the Coast and some D&D, and I think it's kind of on that same style.
Yeah, it's just I think about those landscapes I did for Attack Wagon. I'm like, that could just be a plains card. That could just be a mountain card. I would say a lot of the artists I do follow are actually Magic the Gathering artists. And it's insane to see these guys, like they'll paint paintings that are this big and just do full like fantasy, just really cool artwork. And then they take a picture of it and make it this big. And it still looks really cool. And that's what blows my mind. That's just, it's mind blowing.
So, we've kind of delved into your concept art. Were there any of these that you really are really emotionally connected to? It's just like, this was my most favorite thing that I have done in quite a while, or?
As far as the ones on ArtStation right here.
I mean, we can even look at your Instagram.
This was another one that I was able just to sit down, get in that groove, and make a piece that I was proud of. And proud of in the same way that it tells a story. You can look around and there's always something a little bit interesting to peek at or wonder what's going on.
So I noticed it's titled D&D character art. So it's
Yeah.
kind of like your Magic the Gathering
Yeah,
card type of
exactly.
thing.
It's kind of a feeling of always the bridesmaid, never the bride, where I get to make a lot of D&D art, but I don't play very often, if at all. So whenever people around me are playing, I'm like, I'll draw a character. As long as, can I come play? I'll draw your characters.
Well, speaking of the characters, I believe that you have some characters that you've made.
So these, yeah, I didn't make these. These were made by another artist that I feel bad I can't remember, but she's actually part of the Clever Kaiju group too, so you'll be seeing her. But this was my friend Gabe. He had this D&D party, and this ended up being printed on something like this big and framed on the wall for them. So it was a fun, I think it was a wedding present, because, these two got married? And so it was a big wedding gift for them. That was probably the first try at like a background in a story of some kind. It's not the best.
It kind of
You can
reminds me
tell,
of
but,
the medieval and Renaissance paintings where,
right.
really dark background,
Pointing at each other.
light sources, that group of people around an object or device.
It's because if you
interacting.
make the light source really bright at the table, then it's really dark behind them and you don't have to paint a background.
So, you're talking about your Magic, the idea that making the card for the Magic,
Yeah.
you have the D&D thing here. And I noticed that today we are sitting in Dirks Tavern.
Absolutely.
So you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Oh gosh, Dirks Tavern has been a dream of my husband's, I think, since I met him. And it's been harder work than I could ever imagine, but also probably the single most rewarding thing to see the person you love the most be able to live their dream here. And like, this place is him, it's us, it's nerd, it's board games, like, it's a place where we want to hang out with our friends, because that's all we want to do is hang out with our friends, play these board games, buy the cool Magic cards, build the decks, So we just made our little home away from home, essentially.
So business has been picking up?
Yeah, oh yeah. I mean, it's one of those things where, people have been coming in and going, wow, this is great, I'm going to tell my friends. And it's like, please tell your friends. You get those friends in here, and then get those friends to tell their friends. So we still very baby fresh, and we'll be at Tremendicon. We'll have a booth there, so you can stop by and see us there, ask all those questions. It's been a joy being on Commercial Street and being a part of the community here, and seeing like the Clever Kaiju group come into here. And so again, just big hug of just the things and people we love being here. And it's been a blast.
Cool. So where can people find more of your artwork?
You can find it, will there be links? Because I can't name the links off the top of my head.
I'm sure Nate can get your...
There will be links to my art station. There will be links to my Instagram. And that's about it. Instagram is the general kind of like dumping ground of whatever I have produced. And then ArtStation is the more professional work, essentially. But Instagram is the best way. Hit me up on Instagram, say, wow, cool, and I'll say it back,
Cool. Well, thank you for sitting down and doing the interview.
you.
And for those of you that get a chance, check out Dirks Tavern and check out Haley's websites and Instagram links.
Woo. Good interview.
Yeah, I totally blew it.